Hi, everyone, and welcome to Best Podcast Ever, where three idiots you don't know sit around Mike's table and eat chicken parm.
Takeout.
Technically, two idiots you don't know are eating chicken parm, and I'm supervising.
Mike's eating that coleslaw, pickles, 2 huge cups of sauce,
And a ketchup packet.
and a ketchup packet, which I don't know what that's for.
Why is there one ketchup packet?
There's a whole bag of ketchup packets.
Oh, okay.
So, we took takeout today so that we could join Mike in his home and be a burden to him while we eat food in front of him.
Yeah, well, I was conditioned for this at a young age. My grandmother used to take me out for pizza and drink coffee while I ate pizza. She didn't eat anything.
But
I gave Mike a really awkward gift.
Yes.
A lawn ornament that's sitting over there in his living room.
oh, there's a lawn ornament?
Yes.
What's the lawn ornament?
It's an indie.
It is indeed.
Is it?
Yeah, we'll put a picture of it in. Remember how we said we were not going to rely on pictures?
Do pictures for this podcast. So, fine folks at home, we're trying to find a happy medium because we kind of went crazy with the memes and the photos, and we enjoyed it.
And we kind of lost sight of the notion of this even being a podcast.
Yeah, so we're trying to find a happy medium between still putting up funny images and relevant things to what we say, but not, episode 24ing ourselves.
Right. Not just having it be a series of sight gags. Because this is theoretically a podcast, so you should be able to get something out of it just by listening, I would think.
I mean, the one dude who listens to it, we hope you get something out of it.
Yeah, meanwhile, I still haven't made a title card for the last episode because I can't bring myself to listen to it.
Which one was that?
The one we did at the diner.
This could really just be a chicken parm podcast.
It really could.
They almost, if you take the cheese you don't eat off of this, it's like a do-it-yourself kit. You can eat the chicken parm they give you. The extra sauce and excess cheese. Way too much pasta.
Would you like a spoon?
No,
Ryan is currently eating the matzo ball out of a matzo ball soup coffee cup.
Yeah, and then I'm going to drink the soup out of the coffee cup.
It's their pleasure to serve you, though.
They're getting pleasure out of this right now.
I'm getting pleasure out of
Shout
this.
out to Scotchwood Diner for really hooking us up.
8 miles away,
It's actually cheaper, too.
waves of pleasure are...
Than like normal. Like if we sat down, this would be more, and we wouldn't have gotten random coleslaws and pickles. Also, they gave us.
Would they have told us where the drinks were, though?
I have gotten takeout breakfast from there before, and despite the fact that I was bringing it home anyway, so I was going to use the good syrup that I have in my kitchen, I had the diner syrup filling an entire one of these paper bags.
My sister usually steals everything from everywhere we go to eat, stay, or really anything that's not bolted down.
So,
That was my grandmother's MO. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
so I believe the two of you were off racing slot cars. I was here on...
So actually, we had a very interesting style of racing today. It was a style of racing that you sort of wanted to do in the past that we just got to work by accident. So I showed up super late, as I do,
Yes.
and I was going to be like the bare minimum amount of people in order to race.
Okay.
And my car was trash, straight up garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So then Kevin, says, I have 2 sets of IROC cars. He has 2 sets of cars that we would all just race the car in the lane, and we would move, the cars would stay. And not everyone agreed with that because some people had been tuning their cars for a little bit. So we're like, okay, why don't we do both?
Right.
And then
At
the
the
question,
same time.
well, yes. And then the question became, do we want to enter twice? Because we would have to pay twice to get paid out twice.
I was game for that.
I mean, so I would have gotten more money out of it if we did. But what we decided
I
to
actually
do...
had a free race anyway, so I got all that for nothing.
Fair. Kevin does some work for NJ Hobby, and we pay him in store credit and free races.
Well, he used to pay me at nothing. Enjoy that website. I had a Facebook memory the other day.
GeoCities.
I had a Facebook memory the other day of Brian tagging me in the fact that the GeoCities site had stopped working suddenly, and I had volunteered to fix it.
What have we learned about volunteering?
Never do anything.
You got paid in exposure, Mike.
Yes. Clearly.
So now you can show everyone the NJ Hobby website. And say, look what I did.
Look
It's
what
slot car heaven.
Look what I did with the default WordPress template 5 years ago.
Anyway, so what we ended up doing was we ran the super mods 3 heats per lane. We only did 4 lanes, and we did an entire race. And then we put the IROC cars on the track and did an entire separate race. And just added all the scores together, because we have a scoring system where you essentially get 1 point for every car you beat. And we totaled it up, and the way it ended was our boy Kevin here trashed the field. The person who got second trashed me, who got third, and then I trashed the person who got fourth, because it was not close at all scoring-wise.
Yeah, I think...
The second race was. I had a massive comeback on that one. I was dead after the first field.
I mean, there was technically a close race for second on the first race, too, but...
So, are you accusing me of advocating for the 2 different races, 1 score?
Yeah.
I have advocated for that before, in one specific occasion, which was the magnet and non-magnet groups in the same night.
What about the LMP and GT class? That was where we really. That's where we wanted to try and run them at the same time.
Yeah, we wanted to. Yeah, well,
that could have worked too.
It probably would have worked better if we had more than 4 lanes.
Yeah.
On a 6-lane track, that would have been more interesting.
Or only 4 people there to make sure we did it right. And not have to worry about time.
Yeah, there was always also the issue of just people not really being game for fun.
Why don't you use the whole straightaway?
Why
don't you use both classes?
It's funny because slot car racing is a game. The last time I checked, it's meant to be entertainment, but I have noticed that some people are not necessarily open to having fun with it in any way. So...
Yeah, and we make fun of it all the time, but even if you slightly change rules to try and, like, edit something or switch it up or try and force people to wrench their cars a different way,
yeah,
they will. It's like every sportscaster on the planet, they will never let you forget the way we ran it, in 1994 in August on that really cold night.
The Grand Champion.
Why can't we go back to the good old days?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, like last week, hey, you can upgrade your car, put a better motor in it, put better magnets in it.
And then everyone was mad at you for actually doing it.
Yes, I read.
So
once that college degree helped me. Insert picture of stupid Atlas Willies right now.
It's
It was a Ford.
Oh, that's right. It was a Ford.
It's an ongoing problem with... And yet, I don't know, it's weird because years ago, and this brings me to the topic that I thought of when we decided to do this episode tonight, we used to do some really bizarre race formats regularly, and people would show up and just go along with it.
But was it on a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet?
No. No, it was just the Word document of the schedule.
Back in the days when we were allowed to do things efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah, there was, I don't know. Now I'm, acting nostalgic for the good old days when there seemed to be a lot less quibbling over everything in the rules. As Brian is fond of saying, we're not racing for life-saving medical devices. And yet...
But I have to say that every week, I really do.
Life-saving medical devices to race these cars.
I don't think a dentist drill's a life-saving medical device.
You never know. Gingivitis can kill me.
So, yeah, I mean, it's true. You find yourself having to say that on the regular. But...
What, cavity creeps?
Yeah. I mean, we used to just have some ridiculous races in the schedule. What was it? Was it 500 laps, the Tyco trucks?
Yes, when Best Team Ever was Best Team Ever before Best Team Ever. Best Team Ever, Best Team Ever, Best Team Ever.
This was the proto
You're
BT.
shouting.
This was the proto BT because we hadn't even met Kevin yet. But yeah,
What did the side of your truck say?
Iron
Metalhead or
Ironhead scrap metal.
Okay.
Because it was I had the cab of a Dale Earnhardt hauler, but I couldn't find the trailer of it, and he had just died recently, and people had dug up his nickname before the Intimidator, which was Ironhead, and I was like, that's funny because the trailer I have is a hopper, so I'm just going to crinkle up some aluminum foil and put Ironhead scrap metal on it.
Oh yeah, that was the first time we did it.
Along with a few broken T-Jet bodies. The implication being that Dale Earnhardt wrecked all those people. Which I thought was pretty clever.
I remember we did okay the first time. I don't recall if we won or not.
We did leave the table quite a few times.
Oh, you were allowed to choose partners?
No, this was random draw. This wasn't even qualifying. This was just random draw. But it happened twice in a row that we ran this race and got partnered with each other.
And did well. And my favorite thing is on the second time, the Cobra GT that was on Mike's flatbed
That was the
had to
second
be
time when I went with the flat.
rubber banded on because it had fallen off.
Yes.
Now, I would love to show you folks at home a picture of that. There is a 0% chance we
No
have a
way.
picture of that. That was pre-camera phone.
Yeah. Yeah. So somebody would have had to care enough. I mean, it was the digital camera, the early digital camera era.
So the Sony Mavica era where my dad had to
Yeah.
put floppy disks in his camera.
Yeah. A floppy disk which wouldn't hold one picture from a nowadays camera or even a phone.
My dad was so in love with that Sony Mavica and Data Becker Pixel Editor was his photo editing software of choice.
Was that just something that came with something?
No, so when
Because I've
eBay
never heard of that.
when eBay first became a thing,
Yeah.
because my dad is my dad, he hired a photographer to take his photos.
To stage the products.
To stage the products, and he was like actually photoshopping stuff too. Like he was putting actual effort into this, which I mean nowadays is insane.
His pictures now look pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
He has like a little box made up and everything that he sets the cars in.
Yeah, you use the shadow box to make them.
that my younger brother made.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where when that guy was moving on, because I guess the money wasn't good anymore, he sold my dad the camera and this like CD that had this software on it, and really all he was doing was cropping the photo and adjusting these 3 sliders.
Yeah.
One, red, blue, and green.
Right.
Like he had no brightness adjuster, he had no contrast. He
Right,
just
it's
had,
just adjusting the levels. Yeah.
yeah, that's all he had, and that's the reason why my dad held on with an iron fist to Windows XT for the longest
Oh, because it would
time.
run that.
Because it ran that, and
Did you ever set him up with Photoshop Elements? Because it's
Yes.
pretty idiot-proof.
so
I mean, that was how I learned Photoshop, was by using that until I was comfortable with it, and then I moved on to regular Photoshop.
he straight up refused to use anything but Data Becker until I got him the Mac, and that was the one software he couldn't take with him.
Right.
So back when I had graduated college, but before I moved out, my parents weren't charging me rent or anything. So to like try and settle the score as much as humanly possible, I bought them both.
Them.
I bought them both new computers because they legit did not have a functioning computer in their house. They didn't own one. And at NJ Hobby, he was running a Dell that you had to. It was like an old car. You had to start it up 3 or 4 times before it would take.
Yeah. That's like my Dell at work.
Yeah, and that's when your entire company's on that computer. You can't do that. So I went out and spent several months rent, giant air quotes in an audio format, on 2 computers for them to run, which was a while ago.
Yeah.
Did you chew that last time, Kevin, or did you eat it like a duck?
No, I housed that.
He,
'cause-
he just... Yeah.
Well, the good news is you have extra sauce.
Yes.
oh, I know.
Which you can...
To take all the way back to
you
Pennsylvania.
can guzzle that down.
I've been drinking the soup like it's water.
So, yeah, that... I do not think we have any pictures of the goodness that was Tycho Trust.
I might have some old pictures of when we ran the Auto World Extraction big rigs on the track a couple of years ago, just to give you some point of idea of
Don't
what
promise
we're
images,
racing.
guys.
That's not
We've
the
learned
same.
our lesson.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned the lesson. I don't.
I could just
also-
go home later, take a picture of the one I ran, and say, "Hey, big rig."
Then we had the Le Mans start that we used to run, where, and this is inconceivable now, given where TJet tuning has gone in the last 15 years. Because the notion that you would ever take apart a functioning car and put it together not in a sterile lab setting is pretty crazy. But the way this worked was you had to take everything off the chassis and put everything in a bag and tech in your bag of parts. Brian, you're going to say something?
Once I'm done chewing, with the exception of the cluster shaft
Right,
with
you-
the 2 gears.
Right,
and
you
the
didn't have to.
motor
You didn't have
shaft,
to pull the gears, but you did have
You
to
didn't
pull
have
the
the
wheels.
tools then, I'm sure, to make it as easy.
Right, but you didn't have to pull the press fit gears, but you did have to pull the press fit wheels, which meant that you would never get
Oh,
them
yeah.
on straight again.
yeah. Would anyone else like a cup of water? I'm going to help
Yeah, I'm
myself.
going to
Go for it.
need a cup of water.
So
Mix it in with the sauce.
the glasses are not there. They're there.
Okay. For those of you at home, I'm wandering around Mike's kitchen, hoping to find...
There
You know
go.
what? This is happening.
Is that a dead bug in your soup?
Probably not.
Nah, that's part of the chicken part. Here you go. Kevin, I think these fit our
Oh,
motif.
Yes,
yeah.
those are my wife's favorite glasses. We found those.
In a pit?
Yes, buried in the desert. No, these are 2 Pizza Hut ET glasses that we found actually in an antique store in Corning, New York. We had the Le Mans Start race. Now I cannot even imagine the fights that would break out because, I mean, this even involved, come to think of it, like having to elbow people aside to even find a place to work.
Well, between that and the fact that the way the Le Mans start worked is you got to pick your lane based on
How quickly
how
you got
quickly
on
you
the
put it
track.
together.
So there was the dichotomy between I could put my car together well and get stuck with a lane I don't like
Now,
to
did it-
run many
Could you
hours on.
start first? Like, the second you were done, you got on the lane and you raced?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then I would probably put it together fast and just bleed it away.
So it was funny. I remember there was we don't name racers here, but you'll probably guess who it is based on the description. But there was a guy who is known for tuning it until it breaks. And essentially what happened was he Le Mans started. He had an okay beginning. And I want to say around lap 50, one of the items we didn't put together failed. His cluster shaft spun. So
I don't remember this.
there's no pitting. I mean, well, there is pitting, but it's under green.
Right.
So,
And there's really no easy fix for that
Yeah.
other than to get another gear
yeah.
and press it on. And
So it was one of those things where he
as
was
Kevin
doing really
noted,
well,
the pressing and pulling tools were not as sophisticated then as they are now, so they would have had to hammer of discipline a new gear on, basically.
I think he ended up super gluing it. I think his quick fix was to just put a dollop of super glue on the top of the shaft,
I've done that a couple
accelerator
times.
it, and call it a day.
That
No.
never really holds too well. I mean,
It didn't have to hold well; it just had to hold for another 150 laps.
And then the issue with doing that is, though, anytime that gear spins on the cluster,
Oh, yeah.
it's tossed. Because if you peen it, there's no way it's going to be center anymore.
Yeah.
So every time it's going to clash with that middle with the idler gear.
yeah.
It's game over.
I think it was really just how do I fix this in the next 30 seconds?
Yeah, I mean, this was a different era of TJet racing. This was the era of somebody fixing their cracked screw post with mint-flavored dental floss.
Yes.
I mean, I always like to make the jokes. We're not banging rocks together back here, but that was definitely the age of us banging rocks together, trying to get the cars to run.
You knew it was because I was able to build competitive TJets, which I cannot do. For the
Whereas
life
now
of me
we're measuring pickup shoe pressure to the 10th of a gram.
Yeah.
Well, between that and recently I had given Kevin one of my cars that back when I was working full-time at NJ Hobby, I decided if I'm going to sell these high-end parts for these silly toy cars, I should really go out and spend, I'm sure it was $120 worth of parts to put together a really nice car to show people what they could do.
Right.
And recently I refound it in my box, I cleaned it, I oiled it, I put it on the track, and it ran bad. As Kevin will tell you, all of the tuning was fine, but there were things I missed. You know, like I knew about the pickup shoes, so the pickup shoes were nailed. I knew about, making
The
sure
top plate was perfect.
The
on
top
car.
plate was-
couldn't have been better.
I mean, again, I'm not bad at this, but I completely, screwed up the rear end. I didn't shim it at all.
The brushes.
And the brushes were totally bad. So Kevin took it, and how much time do you think you had to put into that, Kev, like hour-wise?
20 minutes.
Okay.
It was pretty simple. I mean,
But that's like 6 hours for a normal person.
Yeah, so
Maybe that's
Kevin
true.
had the car for 20 minutes and was able to make it into probably the fastest TJet I own.
Yeah.
I also had to build 3 other cars that day, so I didn't have time to mess around.
I would like to remind everybody at home, if you ever want to buy a cartoon by Kevin, NJ Hobby does stock them.
That's true. Yeah, but I guess that really comes down to, if you think about it, slot car racing again is for entertainment value. So
Well,
The
I've
Crapjet class is just weird in general.
there you go.
You'll notice all the classes that I created are just there to annoy people.
Yeah.
Well, at least that had some sort of origin.
So did the Dune Buggy race.
Yeah.
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
that's
jumps.
awesome.
Yeah, so the two races I'm credited for, and that I take credit for, because sometimes I get credited for things that I want nothing to do with, is we have a hot rod dune buggy race, and essentially we weren't racing dune buggies ever.
Or at all, because this year only you and me showed up and we couldn't race.
And I always liked getting, it's called the Daredevil stunt set, made by Aurora in this very distinct yellow plastic.
Yes.
And it had a teeter-totter, it had a jump that never worked, it had, what else?
The humpback.
Just
jump.
well, those are the ones I want to mention last, but I guess humps for both straights and turns.
Yeah.
And there are humps when we run these in a
Hump to the
grand
left.
total of
Hump to the right.
Bring it on back
places.
now, y'all. Is that what you were thinking of?
It should have been.
bravo,
That was good.
bravo. But there are humps in 2 places when we race these at NJ Hobby, and I've never heard the end of it. How people were like, "Why don't we race these without the humps?" And I was like,
'Cause
"Why
that-
don't we just race indies?" Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because the Dune Buggy's not an Indy because it has fenders.
But the hot rod is an indie.
They stick out just a ton. Oh, the fronts stick out. The rears, I don't think.
The rears are underneath the
If you
pickup
rub the
bed.
rid for your pleasure rear tires, you will.
It's an Indy Lights.
It's an Indy in the front and Workhorse in the back.
Yeah.
It's a 1090.
But pretty much that's one of the races I'm credited with creating. We tried to run the teeter-totter.
We did that with a Tyco one Saturday.
We did it with a Tyco on
launched it.
Saturday,
I
but
think we launched that behind the counter, and your dad's like, "No more for you."
yeah, I got in trouble a lot with those.
The Crap Jets class, that's cool.
The Crapjets class also so I can't take credit for creating the Dune Buggy race. It's just something I pushed for, and I worked there at the time, so I was able to make it happen. And Crapjets were the same thing. So what a Crapjet is, way back in the day, they sold this thing called the Hop-Up Kit. If it was an Aurora kit, it was a Hop-Up Kit. If it was an Atlas, it was a Soup-Up Kit. And in the Hop-Up Kit, it came with essentially Indy rears, Indy slicks, a 12-tooth pinion and crown.
Told you to shunt
It told you to shunt.
and drill holes in the
well,
side of the chassis.
Yeah, the booklet, I was getting to that. The booklet really told you to do a whole list of things that really culminated in get a straight edge razor and cut square wheel wells so that you can fit these big old tires in the back of your car. And that instruction there is responsible for destroying probably millions of dollars worth of
yeah.
T-Jets.
Or conversely, creating
A market
Yeah.
for all the ones that aren't.
There would be no reason to collect them otherwise.
I mean, there'd be a reason to collect them, it'd just be much easier.
Yeah.
So, if you go out and you start collecting vintage Thunderjets,
I found this brown Camaro in the trash.
yeah, you find these cars that are these beautiful, rare cars, but then some kid in the 60s or 70s literally took a straight edge razor to them to try and get the big wheels to run in the back because it told you to do that.
That olive Cobra.
Yeah. Well, this is also the same company that told you to take AC power, get loose wires, not cables, they were wires, and wire up your track. And I'd like to remind everyone, I've seen God, and it's when I was trying to tune an AC-powered slot car and I put my hand across the lanes.
You were putting your hands on a vibrator.
Yeah. He said, you're going to want to let go of that. But that's where I was at. So this company was telling kids to do a lot of things that would never fly today. And I said, hey, why don't we do all of the terrible ideas in this manual for the race, and whoever brings the most expensive body that was absolutely ruined by some 12-year-old.
That was giving it to the same person every time. I mean, I kind of had it. Well,
we didn't do it this year. It was really for the first time.
Well, you know who's going to win it every time. It's not even close.
So
I brought some pretty good ones, though.
It promoted people running cool stuff, though, rather than good running things. That was the whole point of that rule. The idea to bribe people into running their most expensive chopped car is so that people would run a Camaro and people just wouldn't go out and get Makos and just run Makos.
Well, you could, orange Mako would be pretty cool. The problem is you'd have to cut half the body apart to get those hot rod rims to fit in the back.
I'm sure some kid did. I'm sure you could find just the front of an orange Mako somewhere, too.
Yeah. I mean, there's something cool about a gimmick race that takes slot car racing back to its, especially HO slot car racing, back to its root as a toy.
Yeah.
It's just funny, though, how, like, that idea of what all the book says to do back then probably made them run good because they ran like shit anyway.
Right.
You know, so, taller tires, more gearing. That's more straight line speed. They didn't handle anyway. Now that we refined them, no.
Always responded to you tuning them. That's probably why they were so popular among the slot car manufacturers.
Right.
Because an old Tyco Pro or an Atlas, if you touched it, chances are you were going to break the daylights out of it, and it was never going to run again. Versus...
It was relatively tunable compared to, especially to its era of...
Yeah, because you couldn't get into a can motor to clean it, but you could get into a pancake to like get the back of a white eraser in there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the most ridiculous stock car race I've ever been privy to, which was on
Digital Team Racing NASCAR.
Oh my god!
On my friend's track that he built in middle school that took up. On the carpet, naturally.
Yeah, where it belongs.
Every inch of his room, using every adapter that we could find at NJ Hobby to incorporate every gimmick track that we could find, from the Tomy drift track to the Tyco jump track to the cobblestone AFX track.
Oh my god! The only thing you were missing was the blue T-Jet track that represented ice that had no grid.
Yeah, that we did not have.
Be happy.
The AFX drift track, mind you, is unpowered, so if you don't hit it...
Oh, yeah!
Because they couldn't figure out how to not short it.
You didn't have the Flexo track, did you?
No.
Okay. No one ever buys the Flexo track. You can still get as much of that new as you want.
We bought, and I mean, he was the beneficiary of this because I chipped in for it and never saw any of the stuff. That would be my dryer.
Oh, it's Tumbling Kevin.
Yeah.
Did you have shunt wires on this track?
No.
So when you got the farthest away from it.
From the lifelike AC adapter.
Ooh, lifelike AC adapter circa the 90s. That would have been half an amp.
Yeah. With the lifelike controllers.
Which would have been fine for a T-Jet, but...
We ran... So we called the track... My friend was a big fan of Rusty Wallace, so the track was called Rusty Wallace International Raceway. If I can find it, I did sketch a map of it, and I created a logo for it in MS Paint. That might go in here if I can find it.
Don't count on it.
Don't count on it. It's actually tacked to the wall in my mom's basement with my HO track that I built while I was in college, and then promptly moved out of the house and never used.
Can we just put a bunch of Rusty Wallace sayings up from?
We could, but anyway.
Yeah, we could, guys. I'm sure we'll get all over that.
Rusty, it's
give
a
me
woodchucker.
editing. Give me editing software, and I'll
Buy
just make
a computer.
something.
So we ran with the AFX Lapometer, mind you, which was the overhead manual spring-loaded counter. Yeah.
To wind that sucker up.
Yeah, in which the cars would trip the counter by hitting something, which was great anytime you ran Indy cars, which is what we ran. We ran a 500-lap Tyco Indy race on this track, which was absolute chaos. And the cars were picking up carpet fibers and generally overheating. We actually had a few cool-off breaks during which we magneted the cars by their traction magnets to a fan in hopes of cooling them off.
Probably did something.
Yeah, we got through it eventually.
Rusty Wallace would have said, "You know what's cool? Some Kodiak."
The sad thing is, video of this race exists, but I do not have it.
I'm about to say, the sad thing or the awesome thing?
It's both. It's awesome.
So Rusty Wallace International Raceway had an Indy race.
Yes.
Did you win?
I don't even remember, which means I probably didn't. But I did my Michael Andretti Craco Chapa March proud. held in there, got through the race on one set of ASTs, which were peeling like crazy.
Oh wow, you even got
ASTs.
ASTs. I was not expecting that.
No, we got ASTs because we walked into the store and said, "How do we make these cars go faster?" And we were handed ASTs.
How'd you get them on the car?
Hammer of Justice. Which is why they were peeling like crazy, because they weren't on straight.
Yeah. And I'm sure he didn't sell you BSRTs. I'm sure he sold you Wizards, which... Wizards is the GoBots to BSRT's Transformers.
Oh man, those were...
And by he, I mean not your dad, but the other person that used to work there.
Oh, Jimmy?
No, Brian.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I guess we're naming other people now.
Well, Jimmy doesn't necessarily count because he's... I don't think he's alive anymore.
Jimmy's going down.
But yeah, we'll do some creative editing around the other guy's name.
Well, I was talking about you, naturally.
Yeah, no, this Brian right here, this guy.
The only Brian. Although at the time, we hadn't actually caught his name, so we just referred to him as Slot Car Assistant.
That's a pretty good description of him.
Yes. And we hadn't caught Joe's name yet, so he was just Slot Car Guy. This was the beginning of my time as an engineer.
Was Joe the Dominic Toretto, where he just sat in a chair and he turned around and stared at you?
He did have a mustache at the time.
He did.
Was he bald?
Yeah,
yes.
No, he's been. I've never known him not bald.
This was the era of this is Slot Car Heaven. This is exactly the period of that picture.
And my dad grew a mustache in, that would have been late 70s, early 80s. And then he didn't get rid of it until like 2005.
Yeah, the picture in the back, he still has it with like a sweater, like vest thing.
You mean the sweater vest he was like wearing today? Like,
yes,
that hasn't
The
changed.
fleece vest that he was born in and will die.
Corduroy pants.
I don't think I've ever seen him in corduroy. Herringbone, yes. Corduroy, no.
But anyway, yes, we were lucky to survive that race. We actually, after that race, reskinned the ASTs by buying a tube
I tried that.
of RTV silicone.
And then did you floor it or?
Yeah, no, they just were lumpy as hell.
Yeah, no. Tumbling Kevin let me know I was wrong.
Yeah.
I tried doing it with
we
silicone before.
We gave no thought at all to like how to make sure that our coating of RTV was even. So we just
we will wobble down the track.
So our improperly mounted wheels were even lumpier than they were before. If only the lumps were strategically placed, it would have evened out.
Well, that was a theory that only made sense until you remembered
that a new set of ASTs cost $7, and why were you going to waste your time doing this?
Well, not even that. So
what about the perfects and the imperfects?
Oh.
Why would you buy the imperfects, you ask?
Because you couldn't find perfects, because he was incredibly specific on what
Because
he
he kept them all.
Yeah. But there was a while at NJ Hobby where the idea was if your rims weren't round, glue your tires to the rims and then make it round based on
the outside.
The outside until you realize, but the inside weight is just throwing itself around like a drowning bat.
The equivalent of just keep pushing the pencil into the sharpener.
Yeah, pretty much.
You were just further and further off balance. Yeah.
You're down to the axle.
We had a lot of bad ideas on Slot Car tuning. We had a theory once that the less surface area you had on your tires in the back in 132nd cars, the more they'd handle because there'd be more magnet downforce per surface area.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
I have a Carrera Enzo that I've carved grooves into.
That makes the opposite of sense.
If you carve grooves into them, as long as it's still the same width, that could help you, but...
How?
By reducing rolling resistance?
Well, you cut the grooves in, and then you soak it in wintergreen.
Oh, well, I wasn't doing that.
Oh, well, there's a teacher trick for you.
Ah, okay. Hello.
Hi, female Kevin.
Because you're still here.
Yes.
We're still here.
Still sitting here.
The food has to settle.
Well, there's a recording device on the table.
Oh.
It's okay.
So welcome back to your third episode, I think you've been on.
Yeah.
You beat the dryer.
It's true, the dryer's only been at 2 episodes.
How many episodes has my child been on?
3.
None so far.
She's been fast asleep.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
I got you some lawn decor in there, you know?
Yeah, check it out. It's on the rug.
Oh,
Not in the trash, yes. Let's wait for the reaction.
I mean, she has to be generally subdued. There's a sleeping child involved.
You could make use of that with something.
So she can't attack it with the hammer of justice just yet.
Notice that its head had been ripped off and glued back on around its neck.
Really?
Where did you find that?
A silent auction.
Oh, silent. I wasn't here for that part.
They paid me to take it.
That's how a silent auction works. We learned that at the challenge.
I'm waiting to hear it just get up and get accidentally dropped. That's how I'm waiting for this episode to end. Just the shattering.
So,
With like the Office Space music playing as it gets this.
on the point of the lawn ornament, which is an indie, segues are best segue.
Yes, let's end this out with some selling out. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and pick this up and hand this to the man so he can sell out.
Yeah, we keep addressing this in episodes that we don't finish, but check out the merch link below, and you will see the hot new line in the BT merch shop. That's an indie collection that I've wasted countless hours on already.
And we've sold 3
to each other, but they are based on some rare vintage photos. Some
Rare.
well, everything is rare.
Everything. I mean, they are one of photos.
Mike's the only one who has
They are
them.
one of
They're
them.
That is correct.
They,
You too could now have them via T-shirt form.
Yes.
I'd like to point out to the 3 listeners of this program that Brian is the only person in the room not wearing basketball shorts.
Well, that's true.
I thought like we were all barefoot or something, and Brian was. Not.
Yeah, no, that's true. I never changed my pants after I got back from the gym, so
And I definitely went to work in workout clothes. So.
there you go. But yeah, check it out. Because unlike in the slot car world, in the real world, single seaters are actually different cars, and there's quite a variety of them. So,
And if enough people demand, and by that I mean if I can bug, thank you, Tumbling Kevin, if I can bug Mike enough, I'm going to take the Chapalola image we have, and we need to Photoshop that into multiple different cars.
Oh, yeah, no,
and change 1990 into Tycho.
yeah, we're gonna do that. It's gonna happen.
All
And,
3 forms of Kevin have been here tonight.
and now the final form reveals itself.
I think we call the final Kevin the sign-off Kevin. Kevin, you want to sign off for us?
Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.